8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Christine Mendoza. How you doing today, Christine?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and I'm so glad that you could come on the show because I'm dying to ask you, what is your story?
What is my story? I am a mother and a wife based out of Los Angeles, California. I am an entrepreneur and I have been a business owner since I was 19. That makes 17 years. Um, let's see. I'm very passionate about philanthropy, charity work, especially with women and families. And I've done a lot in business. I've been in different types of industries. And where I'm at right now is I'm basing it a lot of it on self love and motivation and helping other women. So I think that's me in a nutshell right now.
So you mentioned starting your first business at 19. What's the story behind that? Because most people don't start their businesses at that age.
Oh, well, I was on my own at 16. My highest level of education actually right now is a GED. So I was totally independent, moved out of my mom's house, and I was working 4 jobs. And I understood how hard it was just to stay afloat. Like even if I wanted to go back to school or go into college, I knew that there was a lot that I had to do to even just be able to afford books because I was
Mhm.
always taking care of, my own rent, my food, my car. So I had gotten into modeling. I was approached by an automotive magazine and I did the cover. And from there, my career with modeling kind of snowballed. And it was more in the automotive glamour industry. And I guess at that age, I never really wanted to be a model. Um, it sounds so like, oh, I never want, but I'm naturally a very shy person, and it was just a more of a means for me because working for minimum wage jobs and just having a really hard time to stay afloat and then move on to the next level. I couldn't really do that. So with modeling, it helped me, but I saw so much more potential in it because I saw it from a point of view as a business rather than being famous. Since at that age, my goal wasn't to be like famous or anything. I just needed to get by.
Mhm.
So I started modeling at 17 and I saved up enough money to invest into a website. And from there, I started my journey on owning several paper month website subscriptions. And that was my beginning of my entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. So I know it might be kind of a sensitive topic, but if you don't mind me asking, what happened to lead to you going off on your own at 16? Like, how did that come about?
Well, my mother, I have amazing parents. They're great, but my mother came here as an immigrant. But my uncle was in the military, and he had, petitioned her to come here for a better life for her. My father was still in the Philippines, and I was actually born here in America, being raised by a single mother. And back then, 80s and 90s, she worked. Well, first we bounced around from home to home, but I'm so grateful for my uncle, especially for the Navy, to be able to be a part of America and, you know, so much more opportunity. So totally grateful for that and men in services because that's actually the only reason why I'm here. But my mom, obviously, she was she was a factory worker. It was hard for her to, obviously live on her own because now she was a single mom pretty much. And we bounced around from my uncle's houses to another uncle's house because all of her brothers were all in the military.
Mm.
And she has 5 brothers in the military. So we basically just lived with everyone because we were the last to come here. Um, and they took care of us for a while. So my life with them bouncing around at a young age, I never really had a home. It
Mm.
was always like I was living with somebody else's family, and my mom and I shared a room. And I remember walking to school. And as I got older, she was able to get her own apartment. But this time we were still living with another brother of hers who was single. So we helped each other, and my uncle, he helped raise me for a little bit until he had to, was also in the military, then had to get stationed somewhere else. So I remember raising myself once it was just my mom and I. So I went from my life bouncing around, not really having a home or a father, but I did have my uncles, which I'm grateful for, to all of a sudden just my mom and I, and she had to hold down the fort by herself. I would walk to school as an elementary student and walk home. So she would work from 7 to 7 every day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And when she would come home from work, she would, it would be around 8 o'clock, tuck me in, and that was my life with her. But she loved me. I know that she did everything for me. However, it's hard. It's really hard to bond when you don't really have anyone there.
Right.
So I get so sad talking about it because, like, I am so grateful, and I feel like that has built me to be so much of a stronger person because, yeah, like I think like a lot of my creativity and being comfortable in my own self, in my own skin, in my own loneliness makes me so much of a stronger person, as well as a better functioning adult, I would say, because I've always had to just rely on myself and not just like financially or anything else, just basically like my own healing and um, entertainment for myself. Like I'm very creative because my mind just like thinks like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I'm always cranking out ideas because that's all I really had. We didn't have TV, we didn't have all those things that a lot of kids get to experience. So I owe a lot of my success to that. However, going into teenage years, I grew up in Southern California where going into high school was hard because I grew up in a very low income area where gang violence was very huge. It was in the 90s. And also race tensions were very, very high before. Well, they're obviously very high now, but before, like, it was gangs. So if it's like if you're a specific color, or if you're even wearing something that someone doesn't like you can be attacked. And it was so it was such a big, I want to say, like, culture then, because that's a lot of people who came during that time were also first generation immigrants. So where I lived, there was a lot of like racial wars, tension wars, gang wars, and I went to a school getting bullied for my race, for my looks. I would get into fights because I think I was probably one of 5 Filipinos and maybe one of 20 Asians in the entire high school.
Mm.
So that was hard, especially since I had always had a pretty developed body, and I didn't look like everyone else, I guess, the other Asians. So the other Asians were like, the ones that you would imagine a model minority, as a lot of people would think about. And I basically looked like this, but I had much worse makeup back then. So I was bullied a lot for my race and also my body because I had large breasts, and I just couldn't feel comfortable going to school, even though I wanted to go to school. I went to school with a 4.2 GPA, and from a 4.2 GPA AP student, I was an F student. And the reason why is because I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus, and I didn't have anyone to talk to. And trying to talk to my own mother was hard because she was already tired from work. And so I didn't really have, I guess you can say, assistance or even just a shoulder to lean on or tell me, like, how can I help you? So I just didn't enjoy going to school. And from there, my mom, not really fully understanding because she never really asked, uh, we had a, um, we kind of had a rift because of course she in her mind is like, I worked so hard and you're supposed to be an A student. How did you go from this to this and you're bad or you're wrong? And
Mm,
basically didn't really take the time to help me through it. And back then, school counselors didn't really care because in those types of communities, people were just there to work. I feel like I didn't have any teachers at the time, nor my principal, step in and tell me that they were going to help me. So, I mean, even consciously seeing like a 4.2 student becoming an F student in a year, there's something wrong, but
right.
nobody really tried. So I said, you know what? Like, I would just much rather work. And I knew from there, I got my GED at 16. I knew that I was going to make it. Like, I knew that I was successful in my mind. Like, I knew that I had a lot of innovative ideas. I knew that I was a forward thinker because that's all I ever did. I felt strong because I was able to always defend myself. Because, I mean, if someone tries to attack me, then I was never the type to back down. So I said, I think I can actually survive. Like, I think I've been through a lot. So from there, I started working. I worked multiple jobs. I was a waitress. I worked at the mall. I worked at the gym. Um, and where I worked, so where the mall, the gym, a waitress, and a sunglass store. so, and I was able to make some extra money since I didn't really have a lot of bills then, and help my mom. And I saw how easy it was to help her because she always talked about how hard she worked. And since she was working a factory job, I felt really bad for her body always aching. And I have a younger sister who's 9 years younger than me. So I just kind of took it upon myself to um, be independent. So I'm just not another mouth to feed
Mm,
and be able to also financially provide for them when I can. Because growing up with nothing, I had I still do have a very good money management sense. I know how to budget, and I'm comfortable. I'm happy that way. So, since then I've been supporting my mom and helping her out and as much as I could. And I retired her in 2007. So my mom and my dad who eventually came back to America, came to America from the Philippines, um, ended up working also a factory job. And, 2007, I was able to retire them both. So I'm
that's
proud
amazing.
of her. But that's
That's
my
an amazing
story.
accomplishment.
Thank you.
So I'm curious to learn because it seems like there was a lot of pain there
Mhm.
in that period of you're in this community, there's this bullying going on. There, I mean, there's really no like support system for you. And then on the other side of it, at the same time, you come out with these skills of being very self-reliant and very creative and very innovative. And then it seems like you're a lot stronger person from from having gone through that. So I'm
Mhm.
curious to learn how did that transition happen, and like, how did you actually make that transition from this is very painful and this is not a situation that I like to now I have these new skills and new tools that I can use to, better myself and to make my way in the world.
Um, Honestly, it's a process. I feel like when it came to business, I treated it as a business. I didn't put my personal and emotional into anything business because all I knew back then was to work. And I know how to separate business from personal. I do very well. Um, because I had a drive to succeed. So I kind of blocked out anything that hurt me. even though I wasn't really healed from from the beginning and my process through it, I still blocked it out and performed and executed. And I made sure I succeeded because even though I'm good at budgeting, I live very frugally. I still knew in my mind that I have a family to help, and not just that. Like I have my dad's side of the family, my mom's side of the family. Um, they have relatives still in the Philippines, especially my dad's side. So although my mom has all of her brothers are here and serving in the military, my grandparents were still there, and my father's side, his entire family is still in the Philippines. So I'm actually the first and only one here, other than my sister and I, from my dad's side. So um, I knew that when I became successful, or when I started to build myself and make more money, I had to do something to help them, because I came here basically with nothing. And I'm lucky. I feel so grateful to have uncles to help us. However, there's so many people that I love and care about from my father's side as well, that are still there, that don't really have the means to get a better life, to even have running water, because they live on a tiny little island. Everything there is still powered by generator.
Mm.
And you have to take a boat to get there. There's no paved roads, there's no stores, no grocery markets, CVS, hospitals. It's literally just a tiny island, and you farm and you grow livestock. And if if you get hurt or if you're sick, then you kind of just die, because there are no places to go to get help. And if you can't afford the boat to the main island, then it's just what it is. And the boat trip was like an hour away. So I just felt like I had a duty to still do something, because I didn't want to take that for granted. And honestly, going into modeling, the money was very easy. um, I felt awkward. Like it was like I worked so hard. And I saw my mom work so hard, and my dad, and just getting paid just to be cute was weird to me. But with that, that's why I chose to just give back, because I feel so blessed. But when I went into business, as far as being an entrepreneur and having a staff, or having to deal with so many other things besides just being cute, um, I think I was able to I had a little switch, which was my business switch, which I said I executed, but I was still healing. I didn't get a chance to really like grow emotionally, because I buried it for so long. And it's been a process. I started my first business at 19. I'm 36 now. And I will tell you, I'm still healing. I feel like there's still things that I still want to grow from. And I didn't really start my true healing process until 6 years ago. So from 19 to 30, I kind of just buried it. But I still was obviously hurting, and there are things that I needed to address, but I was so obsessed with being successful. And from there, I became very successful. Um, I've invested into many other businesses, such as bars, nightlife, restaurants, in the cannabis industry. I had a dispensary. So I've done a lot. I had a men's clothing boutique. So a lot of these things I did, like brick and mortars, but I also did online businesses as well. So I was juggling a lot. And um, I made a lot of money. I lost a lot of money, made it back, lost it again, made it back. And it just kind of became like a game. And I was like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. What is the purpose? Um, Having everything, having so much money, to the point where I had a Bentley and homes and an SLS and Range Rovers and these things that people, they say that's successful. I just I didn't drive my Bentley. I hated it. I have, my jewelry, don't wear it. Because after you get that high, well, personally for me, of making the purchase and saying, oh yeah, look at me, I'm successful, I still wasn't satisfied. I was like, okay, what's next? So losing a lot. I've lost a lot. Like I've had seven-figure losses and have bounced back from that. And one thing that stood apart is when I lost everything and realized how happy I was. And that's how I started my journey. I was pregnant with my youngest son. This was 6 years ago. And I had lost everything, from having everything to having nothing. And I didn't want to go back home to my mom. So my husband and I, we, got this little modest place, but still in a high crime area. But I was like, this is like home. This is normal to me. Um, and I was pregnant, and I realized how happy I was. And it's not that like I was happy having nothing in a high crime area with kids, but it was more like, um, what I thought broke me and made me sad, or I thought was a hardship, was actually the birth of my strength. So going back to nothing and living in an area like that, um, I was used to it. It was like a community that I grew up with, and it was just like a normal day. And it's funny to say, like, I felt like I fit in more, but rather than stay there, I knew the tools to get out of it. But rather than go back into investing into nightlife or things that didn't serve me, I told myself that I wanted to do something that was going to have purpose, basically make my cause my career rather than just make a ton of money. So, being broke again and having a family, that was tough because I had kids and I didn't want that for my children as well. But it also brought me back to basically accept myself, forgive my past, forgive my parents. I was in, abusive relationships before my marriage, and I had to learn how to forgive that. Um, and I went through that journey, and I'm still going through healing. So I don't think we ever truly heal like indefinitely, but I'm still healing and I'm growing. But my purpose now is to serve, and also to help other women, because I feel like there's so many people, especially entrepreneurs like online, that talk about like, get this Rolls Royce, get this Bentley, you got to be rich, this is success. And uh, a lot of them probably have either never lost everything or probably don't even have everything, like there's a lot of those fake ones. And I kind of wanted to step up to the plate and say, yeah, like I've kind of been there. I've been, modeling, but I've lived that industry, celebrity friends life, and that wasn't fun really. Like it wasn't really me. I've had all the material things that wasn't fun. And kind of coming out there and being open with that and telling people my personal point of view of what success is. I feel like that's important, especially to young women who see like the bags and the jewelry, and they're kind of swayed a different way. And I feel like when they have that expectation because everyone else is flaunting material items, they kind of start to condition themselves to chase that. Whereas like once you have it, are you truly happy after? And yeah, so the healing process has been yeah, for the last few years, but I will be honest and say I didn't even delve deep into the healing before because I was just so busy with just trying to make it. And even when I kept making it, I said, what's next? What's next? And I saw that that was kind of destructive. Like I was operating out of ego, and I wasn't operating out of love. Whereas my first initial reason as to why I wanted to be successful was to do more charity and help people. I started to become bitter with my past, I think, and I operated out of ego, and I lost myself. And then I found myself again after I lost everything. And that's where I am today. Long story.
Well, the long stories on the show are definitely encouraged because I feel like there are so many people who are either on that journey still
Mhm.
or maybe just starting out, or they may be in that place where they haven't even begun and they need hope and they need to hear from somebody who's been through it,
Mhm.
who's, sounds like you've had your roller coasters up and down, and I mean you've come out on the other side, and it seems like you're in a really um, a really introspective place of having done a lot of work and being really aware of those things. So I appreciate that. All that to say, I appreciate the long answers because I feel like it's really really helpful for people. I'm curious about this healing process, especially in the last 6 years.
Mhm.
And I want to know like the actionable things that you did to actually deal with it. Because it's one thing to say, I have this stuff and I'm dealing with it and it's going to be great. Or, I'm on this journey, but it's another thing to like talk about like how do you actually deal with it? What are the things that you are doing to work on this pain?
I feel like the first step is being honest with yourself, because a lot of people, they say, I want to start to heal or they want to go start the process, but they can't really accept everything about like their past and themselves and the truth. Um, so that's actually what's taken me a while because there are some things that were easier for me to accept, like, just boyfriends, ex-boyfriends. Like, okay, didn't work out. Some of them were, I've had a couple of abusive, physically abusive, emotional, financial, abusive, toxic relationships. But those were easy to forgive for me because like I understand why I was in those relationships, and I think that's the first step is to facing them and understanding it and forgiving it. um, Me understanding why I was in those relationships was because I was alone and I didn't know, I didn't have someone tell me that this was wrong, and especially in the type of community I grew up with, that was normal. So I had no one step in and tell me this is wrong. I just accepted it. And I also didn't want to be alone because I was always alone. So it was easier for me to have someone while I was working and running these businesses. Uh, you know, they would drive me around. I'd only be an assistant, but they took advantage because I think also from the types of men that I probably attracted because I wasn't um, radiating self love then. I was attracting those types of very controlling, jealous, aggressive behaviors. And I do strongly believe energy is everything. So the fact that I wasn't operating out of self love and I was more operating on trying to be successful, ego, I was modeling, and to a lot of manipulating types of people, they see someone that's beautiful, popular on magazines and doing all this and also having businesses, that's like a prize to them. And unfortunately for me, I fell into relationships with people that were manipulative and saw that as something that they could latch onto because I feel like I attracted that myself. And I'm not going to blame anyone else but myself because I could have walked away, I could have left, but I didn't. And I understand that I attracted that. And I know a lot of people will say like, "Oh, that's not fair for you to say because, um, you know, we don't attract that." But I really believe that when you're operating out of like a desperation vibe or you don't really truly love yourself, you will settle for something that you don't deserve. And I settled, and so I should have walked away from the beginning, the first sign, because you can't tell if someone is going to be that way firsthand. You fall in love and you think that they're going to be this great person. Everyone has a mask. And the first time that I saw that there was some kind of, abuse, any signs of, danger, I should have walked away, but I didn't. And I stayed, ended up getting into another similar relationship because I was already broken. So I was already broken from that, going into another one that broke me even more. And I was operating at a lower frequency, which is, um, maybe this is what I deserve, or maybe this is just how life is. And I feel so sad for my younger self because I wish I loved myself more enough back then to know that that's wrong. Because the more you put up with it, and the more you deal with that type of, relationship and behavior, you're just going to keep breaking and breaking and breaking, and then you lose yourself. So I always tell women, um, like you can't control, like, uh, what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And when it comes to relationships, the minute that you see someone is toxic, whether it's the way he speaks to you or she speaks to you, the way, their actions, or if they're cheating or whatever, the first sign you should know it's time for you to walk away. And sometimes these types of predators actually can see that, uh, they can feel that certain types of women are, um, broken, and they prey on women like that. So, um, I always tell people, especially women, like you can't, like I said, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And loving yourself first is the first step to getting into any relationship. Because if you don't love yourself first and you climb into a relationship and stay in it because you just need someone, then that is a recipe for, um, disaster. Because how are you going to truly love yourself if you're just kind of there hoping that someone's going to love you back? And yeah, so I learned that, the hard way. And I feel for so many women that go through the same thing because I didn't know. I wasn't taught that this is wrong. And maybe it's my social conditioning at the time because of where I lived. And my father and my mother are great to each other. So I didn't see that at home, but I didn't spend a lot of time at home. So I didn't know. And I coupled with loneliness, that was, that. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm doing this now, my new projects now, because I just want to be able to be a voice. Because I feel like there's so many other women empowerment groups and people that just tell you that, they fluff it. They tell you like, oh, um, don't do that, don't stay, but they don't really give you like the reasons why and how, and the mistakes that other people have made, or taking accountability for yourself, like not being a victim. um, I believe I was a victim, but I didn't become the victim. I became the victor after I left and found myself and succeeded. And now I have an amazing marriage. I have two children, two dogs, and I'm happy. But it was definitely a process, and that was the biggest thing that I had to do, was accept everything for what it was. And yeah, like many times we are victims, but you don't have to stay a victim. You can flip it and win out of it. And I feel like those situations make us so much stronger, especially in my, with me. Like I can actually talk to people and explain to them the mistakes that I made and how I was able to win out of it. So.
So I'm curious to learn, and I think about this a lot, of about in environments where the victim mentality it's ever pervasive.
Mhm.
um, it's so hard for an individual to break out of that, and to have this realization of, hey, just because I'm seeing this all around me, that doesn't mean that I have to that doesn't mean I have to live that way. It doesn't mean that life has to be like that for me. And I'm curious to learn if there really is no, like, nobody's going to teach somebody that in certain environments. How do how do we reach those people who desperately need that realization? Because it seems like the ones that need it the most are in a place where they're not going to find it, and they're not going to, a lot of the times most people are not going to think about that. So how do we reach them? In your opinion, like, what's the way to get to those people and to help them and to give them that epiphany, that realization that they desperately need but just aren't getting?
Well, for myself, I didn't have social media then. I was young and didn't even have a smartphone. I'm old. But nowadays, technology is so amazing. Like you can do everything on they have something for everything. And since everyone has social media, I think that's such a good, like a good platform to be able to reach different types of people, even people all over the world. Because my platforms, I'm able to talk to women who have come from that type of background. I've every walk of life, from women like me to women that are polar opposite. I hear so many different stories from just every age and walk of life, every race, every, everything because of social media. And we do a lot of outreach work. So we work with a lot of rescue centers and women and children's shelters. A lot of them have women who are homeless with children, and a lot of the other shelters that we work with are women that are escaping abusive relationships with their children. So doing outreach work, sorry, outreach work, um, I think is a good thing because if you can't, a lot of these women who are already broken, I feel like the best way to do it is just one on one, like in person. Um, but obviously, social media is great too because I've been able to help other women just based off of my platforms. So I think that's important. But if people don't have like a social media following and they want to continue to help women more, going straight to their local shelter, and it's not like a homeless shelter where people think like, okay, you're, you're feeding that and then you're cleaning, and because there's a lot of shelters that are that way. There are many others that are private or church based that you can actually get more of a one-on-one meeting with them, or even just like helping them with talking to them. I've worked with a shelter where we're able to just talk to them. My kids come and play with the kids, and they sometimes they don't even really need it. They don't want advice at first. They just want to talk to another woman. So just having someone to talk about like their day at work, or like fashion and hair tips, because we're all women, and having my kids play with the other kids that are living there, it gives them a sense of like normality versus like the stigma of, oh, you're in a shelter. So having that helps them, and through there we're able to get more personal with like their story. But it starts from just showing up, and I teach my kids the importance of giving back. And it's funny because the first time I took my oldest, he's 9 now, and I took him to the shelter about when he was about like 6. So he's been going with me, and he didn't know that these kids are like him. Like they look like him. They have the same clothes. Like I think in their minds they think like someone that's experiencing homelessness is wearing like, you know, like rags, and which, obviously many that are experiencing homelessness do. But it can be any that you can't really judge someone on their appearance. Um, it can be anyone experience some kind of financial trouble or hardship, but they just don't speak about it. So I tell my kids, you see these kids that are just like you, and a lot of them probably go to your school, and you don't even know it. And when you see someone that's sad or going through something or being bullied, you have to stand up for them. And this is why, because people don't talk about their personal issues and what hurts them. Because I didn't at that age, and now that I'm older, I'm able to. But this took me a long time to be able to get to the point where I can talk about it. So with my children, I want to teach them at a young age so that way they're accustomed to like understanding, people, and they have a heightened sense of emotional intelligence for everyone. And that way they don't have to, learn the hard way. They automatically have that compassion for everyone. um, but I think that's the first step of getting that type of healing out, is actually just showing up like physically, and it kind of snowballs from there. So.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation because to me, there's nothing more powerful than talking about this stuff and bringing awareness to this kind of stuff because you're right. A lot of people, I mean, we all like talking about ourselves most of the time, but when it comes to like the things that really deep down hurt, I mean that's very difficult to talk about a lot of the times. And so I think this message of, hey, sometimes we just need to show up for those people, even though we may not know what they're going through. And a lot of the times we probably don't in the beginning. I think it's a really powerful message. And I'm very glad that the conversation went this way. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank
Um, and I want to be very respectful of your time. So I just have one more question for you, then we can wrap it on up. I'm 24, and I know you mentioned that you were 36 earlier. And so the reason I bring that up is because I want to ask specifically from my perspective.
you.
But what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
um I, I think, like, what is your vision of what does success look like to you um now? Because success, uh a lot of people, if they're watching, and they get asked the same question. A lot of people, not all, but obviously many people nowadays, with social media being so wrapped up about like celebrities and material things, success to most people are having millions in the bank and having all this material stuff and fame and fortune. And I wish I knew that true success when I was younger was actually loving myself, loving those around me, and being able to help and heal others, and finding a business that you can actually be proud of, rather than um, going into business for the pure fact of just wanting to make money. Because I feel like a lot of people who go into business just to become wealthy, they kind of get stuck in a rat race, and they're on this hamster wheel, like forever wanting more. And I was in that wheel for a few years, and I'm lucky enough to experience losing it all to understand that that wasn't success. Um, and I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs should also know that as well, because I know a lot of people who have made tons of money, lost it all, and they go crazy. They don't know how to cope with it, or many of them, like, just like they're mentally gone after that, because they focus so much on being wealthy and having things, that having nothing was absurd. So they just can't survive. um, and that's something that I wish a lot of people understood, that like, what if you lost it all? How would you feel? How would you feel about yourself? How would your family feel? How would you be able to get out of it? um, and they don't really people don't really think about it. They just think about, like, oh, I'm going to be successful and buy lots of stuff. They don't think about like the end result, like if they were to lose it all. And for me, having my family being supportive of like us losing it all, because that's just how I was comfortable with, but gaining like self-love for myself, I healed from my past. And investing now my business into something more that would help the community, help women, help the world, um, rather than just be some bar owner. Like, it just didn't resonate with me after I found my healing process. So, money isn't everything. I mean, it's great to have, you need money to survive, obviously. But I feel like success will always come to you when you're coming from the heart, you're operating out of love. There's no desperation energy, because the moment that you're desperate to do more and make more, you also attract so many more negative people, situations, and it happened to me. So now that I operate differently, and it's not ran by ego or desperation or wanting to prove myself, now I'm just flowing. And I would say that this is probably my most successful year yet. So, um, yeah, so success. I hope people are able to see what success truly is. And if success means financial and material, then they need to make a plan to be able to keep that going if, in case they can't, and to be okay with it, which starts with loving yourself.
Well, I want to thank you so much again, Christine, for coming on the show today and sharing this time with me. I'm very grateful for that. So I just want to say thank you to you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to thank y'all very, very much. Um, y'all are the reason that I do this. And I'm so grateful that y'all chose to be with us today and share this time with us and stick with us all the way till the end here. I think we talked about a lot of important things. So, um, yeah, thank y'all very much. I love y'all very much. And Christine, thank you again. And I will see y'all all on the next episode. Take care now.